From roughly 2012 to 2018, every single reddish-brown Lego piece was extremely brittle and would break from pretty much anything. This was a huge problem that Lego definitely doesn't want us to remember, but they've done way crazier things that they want us to forget. Let me tell you about something that genuinely made people angry back in 2011. Lego used to sell these magnet sets where you could stick minifigures to your fridge or locker. And the cool part was that you could actually remove the minifigure from the magnetic base. So if you wanted to collect rare minifigures, you could just buy the magnet set and pop them off. It was perfect. But then in 2011, Lego started permanently gluing all of the minifigures to their bases. And I'm not just talking about a little bit of glue. They were gluing the torsos to the legs too, so you literally couldn't take them apart at all. Fans were furious, and I mean, can you blame them? The whole point of buying these was to get the minifigures, and now they were just stuck to a magnet forever. The reason this happened was apparently due to licensing issues with Star Wars, which doesn't make it any less frustrating. But let me show you something super sick that's been gone for way longer. From 1986 to 1998, Lego had this thing called the 9-volt system, and it was honestly kind of insane. You'd have a battery box and then these special conductive bricks that had metal lining inside of them. And when you connected them all together, they'd make an actual circuit. No wires, no complicated setup, just bricks that conducted electricity. And then you could add light bricks or sound bricks to make sirens, lights, and sounds. The problem was that these systems were bulky and complicated, especially for younger kids, so Lego discontinued them. But here's the thing, they actually tried a simpler version back in 2019 with some city sets, and people loved it. It just goes to show that sometimes the old features really were better, even if they were more complex. Now, if you've been building Lego for a while, you probably remember those raised base plates that used to come with certain sets. I'm talking about the ones with built-in terrain, craters, road patterns, all of that. Castle sets had base plates with rocky textures, city sets had roads already printed on them, and space sets had those awesome crater base plates that you could use as ramps. They gave your builds instant scale and made everything feel more complete right out of the box. But Lego phased them out because of cost, packaging, size, and the fact that they were pretty fragile and could crack if you weren't careful. Now we're stuck with either flat plates or having to build roads ourselves, which takes way more time and pieces. But the worst part, those old crater base plates from Classic Space sell for like $35 to $40 each on the secondhand market. So even if you wanted in on the action, you'd have to pay a lot of money. Speaking of classic themes, let me tell you about something in the castle theme that gave it way more life. Lego used to include these massive pre-molded pieces that let you build rock formations really easily. People called them burps, which stands for big, ugly rock pieces. And even though the name sounds bad, they were actually super useful and loved. You could snap them together and have a full wall around your castle in minutes, instead of spending an hour building it brick by brick. But Lego discontinued them because they wanted to shift toward fully brick-built structures for better play value. And I get it, building everything from scratch does give you more flexibility and lets you customize your builds. But at the same time, those burps were iconic, and a lot of people miss being able to throw together a castle that quickly. But castle wasn't the only theme that lost something important. Pirate ships used to come with real fabric sails that had printed designs on them, and they made the ships feel so much more authentic and premium. Like, you'd open the box and see this actual cloth sail, and it just felt special. But these were gradually replaced with plastic sails or brick-built alternatives, and honestly, they're just not the same. The original cloth sails are now expensive collector's items, and some fans have even started making DIY replacements because they miss them so much and can't afford the real ones. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a real fabric sail than a plastic one any day of the week. Going back to castle for a minute though, there's one more thing I have to mention. These large round shields with a single center stud that you'd see in sets like the 6030 catapult were fan favorites for castle builds. They were simple, they looked great, and you could attach them to minifigures or build them into walls. But they were phased out for more complex printed designs or just regular shields. And sure, the new shields have more detail, but there was something really satisfying about those simple round shields that you just don't get anymore. Oh, and speaking of that catapult set, let me tell you about another thing that's changed. Old LEGO castle sets had functional catapults that could fling projectiles across an entire room. The catapult set from 1984 had this powerful Technic-based mechanism that could launch things with serious force. But modern catapults are way weaker, or they've been replaced by stud shooters, which are fine, I guess, but they're just not as satisfying. There's something about pulling back a catapult arm and watching something fly across the room that stud shooters just can't replicate. But at least catapults are still around in some way. Flick fire missiles, on the other hand, are basically gone. These were introduced in 2006, and they were super simple. You would just flick them with your finger, and they'd shoot out. They weren't as reliable as spring-loaded shooters, but they were way more fun to use. While they're still technically available in some sets, they've mostly been replaced by those spring-loaded shooters and stud shooters, since they're more consistent. Sometimes I feel like LEGO prioritizes function over fun, and this is a perfect example of that. Now, this next feature being removed does kind of make sense, but is still definitely sad. LEGO trains used to connect with magnetic couplers, which was awesome because you could easily attach and detach cars. But small magnets became a safety hazard, especially for younger kids who might swallow them. So in 2005, LEGO introduced this huge sealed buffer beam to keep magnets in trains to make them safer. And now you have to use different connection methods that just aren't as convenient. I totally understand why they did it, but man, those magnetic couplers were so easy to use. But if you think losing train magnets is bad, let me tell you about something that's even worse. From 1987 to 1994, LEGO made 3 legendary monorail sets with futuristic elevated trains and automatic switching tracks. These things were incredible, and people absolutely loved them. But here's the thing. Single pieces of track now sell for $20 or more on the secondhand market, and LEGO has said that the molds are gone and they won't be coming back, despite massive demand. There have been multiple LEGO Ideas projects trying to bring the monorail back, and people have even started 3D printing replacement tracks because the demand is so high. But LEGO just won't do it, and honestly, it's one of the most requested features that LEGO refuses to bring back. But another one is the power function system. This ran from 2007 to 2018, and it was super reliable and standardized. You had motors, lights, and simple plug-and-play connectors that just worked. But it got replaced by Powered Up in 2018, which uses Bluetooth and is supposedly more advanced. The problem is that Powered Up is way more expensive and way more complex to set up. And sure, Bluetooth is cool and all, but sometimes you just want something simple that works without having to connect it to an app or worry about battery life. Power Functions was perfect for that, and a lot of people still prefer it over Powered Up, but at least motors are still around, because pneumatic systems, on the other hand, are basically extinct. LEGO Technic used to have working pneumatic systems with air pumps, cylinders, and hoses that created realistic hydraulic motion. There were 2 generations of this, Generation 1 from 1984 to 1989, and Generation 2 from 1989 and onwards. These systems offered incredible play features and made Technic sets feel like real machinery, but they're rarely included in modern Technic sets anymore because they're too expensive to produce. And I get it, pneumatics are complicated and add a lot to the cost of a set, but man, those old Technic sets with pneumatics were something special. But while we're talking about complex systems that are basically gone, let me show you the 12-volt train system that ended in 1991. This system had remote-controlled signals, points, and lights that you could automate. When LEGO switched to 9-volt trains, most of these electronic accessories were lost. Fans still miss the advanced automation that the 12-volt system offered, because it let you set up really complex train layouts that could run themselves. Now, you either have to use third-party products or just accept that your trains won't be as automated as they used to be. But let's move away from trains and talk about Star Wars for a second. Back in 2005, LEGO released the Ultimate Lightsaber Duel set, and it included battery-powered glowing lightsabers that you could activate by pressing the minifigure's head. How cool is that? You'd press down on the head and the lightsaber would actually light up, but they were discontinued, mostly because they only had a 3-hour battery life. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense. But Star Wars wasn't the only theme with light-up pieces. The Toa Inika sets from Bionicle in 2006 had light-up weapons with LEDs built in. You could press a button and the weapon would glow, and it was incredibly cool. But just like those lightsabers, these were discontinued due to battery shipping and cost issues. Bionicle fans still talk about how awesome these sets were, specifically because of those light-up weapons, and it's a shame that feature never came back. But if you think light-up weapons are cool, let me tell you about Exoforce sets from 2006 to 2008. These sets included light bricks connected to fiber optic cables that make the cockpits of mechs glow. It gave them this realistic, powered-up look that made them feel like they were actually running on energy. Modern mech sets don't have anything like this, and honestly, they feel a lot less impressive because of it. The fiber optics made Exoforce mechs stand out, and it's a feature that I wish LEGO would bring back for modern mech themes. But here's a light and sound brick that's become legendary for a different reason. The 2009 Grand Carousel set included a special sound brick that plays carousel music, and it was only used in that one set. Because of this, the brick sells for insanely high prices on Bricklink, and collectors go crazy trying to find one. It's one of those pieces that became valuable specifically because it's so rare and unique, and you can't get it anywhere else. But now, let me tell you about a theme that completely relied on technology and then lost everything when that technology was shut down. The Hidden Side theme ran from 2019 to 2020, and the sets were designed with rotating elements and colorful pieces that you were supposed to scan with an AR app for ghost hunting gameplay. The sets themselves were cool builds, but the whole gimmick was the app, and in 2023, LEGO discontinued it, which means all that interactive functionality is just gone forever. If you buy a Hidden Side set now, you're only getting half the experience because the AR gameplay is entirely inaccessible. Another theme that had something similar happen is the Nexo Knights theme. From 2016 to 2018, the sets had collectible power shield tiles that worked with an app, but since that app is completely gone now, there's no way to use them again. Around 3 years ago, someone on Reddit noticed that it got taken off the App Store. So I'm not exactly sure when the app got taken down, but I know for sure it's gone forever. Clearly, LEGO has a lot of discontinued tech features, but this next one made people more upset than ever before. LEGO Mindstorms was a programmable robotics platform that taught kids coding and engineering for decades. It was incredible for education, and hobbyists loved it because you could build custom robots and program them to do basically anything. But in 2022, LEGO discontinued Mindstorms in favor of Spike Prime, which is more education focused and less flexible for custom designs. Spike Prime is fine for classrooms, but hobbyists really miss Mindstorms because it gave you way more freedom to experiment and build whatever you wanted. But here's something that's happening right now that a lot of people are worried about. LEGO is actively trying to phase out paper instructions and move everything over to digital-only manuals. And to make things worse, they've already removed artwork from instruction covers, so now they're just generic white backgrounds instead of having cool themed artwork. Fans want physical manuals because it lets them disconnect from screens while building, and the artwork on the covers used to be part of the excitement of opening a new set. Now everything looks generic and boring, and if LEGO goes fully digital, that physical experience is just gone. But that isn't all, because LEGO's also trying to transition from plastic bags to paper bags. The new paper bags are just plain white with faint brick patterns on them. You can't see through them like you can with the plastic bags, so there's no more excitement of seeing all the colors through the bags when you open the box. But I'm still not done, because there's another thing that made opening sets less exciting, but this one happened a long time ago. LEGO used to include these small catalogs inside sets that showed you other sets in the theme or upcoming releases. You'd finish building your set, and then you could flip through the catalog and see all the other cool stuff you could get. But now it's mostly just QR codes or nothing at all, and honestly, it's not the same. I never even got one of these catalogs in a set. This is something that's been gone for a while, but I really wish they'd bring them back. But something everyone wants to come back are play features. Have you noticed that most sets these days feel like decorations instead of toys? Well, if you did, you wouldn't be alone. And this is one of the main things that people are upset about. LEGO really made a name for themselves in 1979 when they introduced the castle, space, and pirate themes. These themes were exactly what the people wanted. Cool looking, high quality toys that you can play with forever and not have to worry about them breaking. The castles had working drawbridges and turrets at the top. The spaceships had operational cockpits that felt real. And the pirate ships were just downright incredible. These three themes really put LEGO on the map, but these days they've basically been phased out, and those play functions that gave LEGO a fan base have fallen to the wayside. They do still make some sets with play functions, like the LEGO Mario Bowser set, but for the most part, people just feel like everything is a cash grab, since all they really make anymore are licensed sets. This has been a very slow fall from grace that not everyone is actually upset about. But something you would have noticed more recently is the disappearance of chrome pieces. You used to be able to find these things in a bunch of different themes, but the most popular one was LEGO Star Wars. In the movies, lightsaber hilts are a shiny silver, and since LEGO wanted to make their toys as accurate as possible, they coated every lightsaber in a shiny chrome paint. Now, the reason we don't have chrome pieces like this anymore is actually pretty valid. The paint quality wasn't very good, so not long after you got the piece, it would start shipping off until it was completely gone. But here's my thing with this, LEGO stopped making these pieces sometime between 2005 and 2010, and by this time, they had a ton of money. So they could have easily found a higher quality chrome paint to replace the old one, and keep the lightsabers, armor, and everything else the way it should be. Obviously, this didn't happen, and as a result, LEGO kind of just uses whatever color they want for gold and silver. Now, even though this is technically an upgrade in quality, it's a downgrade in looks. But if you think LEGO's immune to quality problems, I'm about to burst your bubble. Over the years, they've made super small changes to a ton of different molds. But one that a lot of people have noticed is the change to Minifigure's legs. They've made lots of tiny tweaks over the years, but one thing they can't seem to fix is the heels cracking over time. The cracks are never big, and it's not like they make the minifig useless or anything, but they're definitely there, and they're definitely a problem. The thing is though, it can happen just from leaving a minifigure on two studs for too long. A bunch of different people have noticed this over the years, so if you plan on putting any minifigures on display, make sure you use a panel piece instead of a baseboard or something. It will literally be the difference between your minifigure breaking or not. Another downgrade that's made people pretty upset recently is the rise of stickers. People are saying it feels like every piece with a cool design these days is a sticker, and honestly, they're not wrong. There's literally an entire theme that's known for this too, the Speed Champions theme. In theory, this theme should be super popular. A bunch of cheap LEGO cars? Sign me up. But because of how many stickers are in these sets, people want nothing to do with them. It's not just the fact that stickers are taking over though. LEGO has quite literally swapped out pieces with prints on them for stickers. This is the only picture I was able to find of this, but I really can't think of why LEGO would want to do this. They've been cutting corners for a lot longer than we thought though, and it's super obvious when you look at the evolution of the parrot piece from the pirate theme. Like I said before, this theme helped put LEGO on the map, and when you look at this parrot, you can definitely tell it's from back in the day. Wait, what'd you say? LEGO made this parrot in 2017, not 1979? No, there's no way that's true. Oh my god, it is true. Wait, so then what'd the parrot from 1989 look like? There's actually no way. Are you serious? My bad, guys. Apparently, I was completely wrong. I went into this thinking the tie-dye looking parrot was the vintage one, and the painted one was more recent. But it's literally the exact opposite. See, this is what I mean. LEGO just up and took away the paint that made the parrot look like a parrot. I absolutely hate when they just take away stuff like this. But honestly, this is pretty mild compared to what I'm about to talk about next. Clearly, LEGO has no problem taking away small details like this. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter if it's paint on a parrot or the one thing that saved LEGO from bankruptcy in 2001. If you know this story, then you already know where I'm going with this. But the next downgrade is the complete removal of the Bionicle theme. This is a theme that every Gen Z kid like me grew up on. It was Bionicle and Lego Star Wars. But what I didn't know when I was a kid was that Lego was about to go out of business before I was even born. They hadn't been doing very well in the mid to late 90s, and the one thing that saved them was the Bionicle theme. Not only was it one of the most successful Lego themes ever, but it went further than that. It got its own TV show on Cartoon Network, its own video games, random merch pieces, and way more. But if all of this is true, then where is it? Where is this theme that people love so much? Well, to tell you the truth, it's been gone since 2010, and we don't even know why. Lego never gave us an actual reason for discontinuing Bionicle, so to us, it just looks like they gave up on it. They tried to bring it back in 2016, but it just wasn't the same, and they ended up discontinuing it again. Sorry to tug at your heartstrings like this. I know Bionicle has a special place in all of our hearts, but it had to be said. Lego getting rid of Bionicle was one of the biggest downgrades the company ever made. They were making a lot of changes around this time, and according to a lot of people, this is when Lego started to feel lifeless. This was the beginning of the death of Lego that people talk about today. People don't feel this way just because they canceled Bionicle though. It comes down to even the smallest details, like what Lego puts on boxes. Back in the day, it was super common to see alternate builds on the box of whatever set you were buying. The whole point of it was to inspire creativity and show people that the set they were building didn't have to be built the way it was in the instructions. Lego was literally telling people to buy the set, build it one way, take it apart, and do it all over again. But nowadays, the only time we see different builds on boxes is if that's the entire point of the set. They started making 3-in-1 sets not too long ago, and I'm not hating on the idea or anything, but I can see why people read so deeply into this detail. One person on a Lego forum website said, nowadays, there are no alternate backgrounds on backsides of boxes. Instead, there are some teaser pictures of other sets, and sometimes a message saying collect them all. Isn't it rather obvious? They were hinting at the fact that Lego replaced alternate builds with other sets to get people to spend more money. But the outside of the box isn't the only thing that's lost some life. The inside of Lego boxes used to look completely different. When you open up a Lego box today, all you'll find are poly bags and sticker sheets, but this isn't even close to what they used to look like. Instead of the box just being a vessel for the pieces, Lego made the inside look incredible. When you open it up, it almost felt wrong to take anything out of it. Everything was on display, so if somehow you didn't know what you were buying, you'd know as soon as you opened up the box. When I look at stuff like this, all I can think is that Lego used to care more, but it goes further than this. Along with alternate builds and good presentation, Lego also used to include base plates in sets. You know, those giant 32 by 32 plates that we hardly see anymore. They were in sets for loads of different themes, but one that had a ton of them was the town theme. But even then, when Lego did make base plates for other themes, they made sure it matched. Like, look at these raised base plates. These are clearly meant for something way different than town, probably castle or something. But notice how there's not only a whole environment, but it has a 3D design that's basically begging you to build on it. I can't even remember the last time Lego included a raised base plate in a set. To be honest, I probably wasn't even around for it. Something I'm more than old enough to remember though is the slow disappearance of glow-in-the-dark pieces. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I build every Lego set that comes out, but I genuinely can't remember the last time I saw a glow-in-the-dark piece in any newer set. I look at the new ones on the Lego website pretty often, so I feel like if they did use glow-in-the-dark pieces, they'd really advertise it, like how they did for the Monster Fighters theme. It's a failed theme from 2012, but I'm gonna play a commercial Lego made for it and point something out to you. Obviously, this theme is supposed to be spooky, but notice how they made the lighting all dark to make the glow-in-the-dark pieces pop? The vampire in the castle glows in the dark, another random vampire glows in the dark, and a piece on the flying train glows in the dark too. They really wanted you to see that this set had a lot of glow-in-the-dark pieces, and even though the theme failed, the concept is still really cool. It usually takes Lego a while to phase things out like this. Like, most of the downgrades in this video have been pretty gradual, but for some reason, Lego loves making the stuff in superhero themes worse. Doesn't matter if it's Marvel or DC. So for the rest of this video, let me show you just how bad it's gotten and how fast it happened. I'll start off with minifigures. This is a Sam Wilson Captain America minifigure from 2021, and I think we can all agree that it looks sick. Yeah, it'd be annoying to put the stickers on his wings, but if you get it right, he comes out looking amazing. If you aren't caught up in the MCU, Sam Wilson is here to stay as Captain America. And since we got this minifigure in 2021, Lego's made one more. And, I mean, just look at it. This is one of the only times I'll say this, but bring back the stickers, LEGO. They look so much better than the plain pieces. This is what I was saying in the intro, with LEGO making a minifigure look super sick, then ugly a few years later. I mean, this is literally a 3-year difference right here. I promise I'd show you both Marvel and DC though. So take a look at this Poison Ivy minifigure from 2017. Again, just like the first Sam Wilson minifig, this one looks really good. The prints, the hairpiece, the little skirt, it's all incredible. But now look at what they did in 2019. Like, let's be so for real. This is insane. This literally looks like I'm comparing a minifigure from 2002 to 2020. But no, the ugly one was released 2 years after the cool one. The craziest part about this though is the minifigure doesn't even have to be small to get downgraded. Like Ant-Man in the superhero airport battle set from 2016. Making Ant-Man a giant minifigure is a pretty funny move from LEGO. He was giant in the movie, so if it's gonna happen in LEGO, then it makes sense for him to look like a minifig. I know for a fact that a lot of people appreciated this, but look at what they did to him in a set from this year. I mean, the pictures just speak for themselves. Clearly, this version of Ant-Man is way less fun than the minifigure version from 2016. But unfortunately, LEGO's gotten lazy with the actual design of certain sets. Let me show you what I mean. This is an Iron Man helmet set from 2020, and even though it only has 480 pieces, it still looks pretty accurate to the real Iron Man helmet. Now, there are technically a bunch of different Iron Man suits, but LEGO just recently made a set for the Mark IV suit. And look at how weird this thing looks. Doesn't the mouth shape just creep you out? I like the idea of showing more than just the helmet, but if the literal face of the set is gonna come out looking like this, you might as well just use more pieces and make it more expensive. This set got a pretty low rating, but it isn't even close to the worst rated LEGO set ever. Let me show you what I mean. Back in 1988, LEGO released the Technic test car, which was supposed to be this cool supercar build. But here's the problem. It used interference fit black pins that were so tight that once you built the set, you physically couldn't take it apart. Your fingers would hurt trying to pull pieces apart, and most people just gave up. The whole point of LEGO is that you can build, take apart, and rebuild things however you want. But this set becomes permanent after one build, which completely misses what makes LEGO special in the first place. But at least the test car stayed together. The Technic Sahara Blaster from 2001 had a flex system steering mechanism that broke constantly and couldn't actually steer properly. So you'd try to drive it and the steering would just snap. And if you added a 9-volt motor to it, which LEGO sold separately for these sets, it became incredibly easy to crash because the steering didn't work. The B model was awful too, so there wasn't even a backup build to save the set. You were just stuck with a car that couldn't turn. Speaking of Technic disasters, the stunt bike scored a 3 out of 10 on the LEGO car blog, which is the lowest review score in their entire library, and they've reviewed hundreds of sets over the years. This is a pullback motorbike that comes with a cardboard ramp. That's the whole set. No functions, no mechanisms, just a pullback bike and cardboard. They called it the worst motorcycle ever conceived, and honestly, I can see why. Imagine building a Technic set expecting cool gears and moving parts, and instead you get something that belongs in a $5 impulse set. Now, Technic sets are supposed to have functions and mechanisms, but sometimes LEGO tries to make buildable figures instead. The Technic C-3PO from 2001 is a perfect example of how badly this can go. First of all, they based this on the version of him from The Phantom Menace, where Anakin hasn't actually finished building him yet, but it gets worse. The whole thing is shaky, the knees don't bend, and the limbs fall off easily. And when they do fall off, they're really hard to reattach. But to top it all off, there's a button that's supposed to blow him up as a play feature, but it doesn't even work properly. But if you think C-3PO is bad, the Technic Humongosaur from the Ben 10 theme is universally considered one of the ugliest LEGO sets ever made. It's been described as hideous, unsatisfying, and terrible by basically everyone who's reviewed it. The best compliment anyone could give this set was that it has unique brown pieces. That's it. When the only positive thing people can say is that some pieces are a rare color, you've created something truly awful. And speaking of Ben 10, that entire Alien Force theme was a disaster too. In 2010, LEGO made a deal with Cartoon Network to make 6 sets based on the show. All 6 of them had under 25 pieces each, which is incredibly small. So it's no wonder the entire theme was introduced and discontinued in the same year. LEGO thought they could capitalize on a popular cartoon, and it bombed so hard that they pulled the plug in less than 12 months. But at least Ben 10 was a small theme that failed quietly, because LEGO Dimensions was the exact opposite. This theme was supposed to be LEGO's big entry into the toys to life market. They partnered with Warner Bros. And TT Games in 2015, and it was this expensive concept where you had to buy physical LEGO sets to unlock content in a game. LEGO thought this would be massive, but it completely failed. The whole thing was cancelled in October 2017, which means it only lasted 2 years. Some of the exclusive minifigures are even valuable now, but only because the theme failed so badly that not that many people bought them in the first place. Keeping the fail train going, the LEGO Masters Building Academy ran from 2011 to 2013 as a replacement for Brickmaster magazine. But here's the thing, it was more expensive and less popular than the thing it was replacing. It was supposed to be a USA test market before going worldwide, but instead it just died after 2 years. When your replacement product is worse and more expensive than what you're replacing, people just won't subscribe, which you should do the opposite of. Now let's talk about some color disasters, starting with the original MTT in LEGO Star Wars from 2000. This set cost $40 and came with 470 pieces and 7 minifigures, which sounds pretty good on paper. But when you look at the actual build, it's a mix of tan, gray, black, and green. Yes, green on an MTT. This thing is completely brown in the movies, but LEGO decided to throw green in there for absolutely no reason. It's eye-catching for all the wrong reasons. Even if you've never seen Star Wars, you look at this thing and immediately know something's off. But at least the MTT was a cheap set from the early 2000s, because Kylo Ren's command shuttle released in 2015, and every color is the wrong color. In the movies, the shuttle is black, but LEGO made it dark gray, and the wings don't fold out like they're supposed to either. For a company whose motto is only the best is good enough, this set has some major inaccuracies that should have never made it past the design phase. How do you mess up the color on a $110 set? But speaking of wrong designs, the Spider Trike from the Spider Trike vs. Electro set might be the dorkiest vehicle LEGO's ever made. This thing looks like a farm tractor, not something Spider-Man would drive. It's flimsy, it's fragile, and Spider-Man literally falls out of it because there's no plate to hold him in place. And there are these weird broken sticks on the back that don't serve any purpose. You look at this and wonder how it ever made it through any design meetings. I mean, it really just doesn't make sense. Clearly, LEGO makes some sets that are completely out of place, and the giant Batman from 2003 is another one. It's this bizarre, oversized action figure style Batman that doesn't fit with anything else in the LEGO universe. It has weird parts that can't be reused for other builds, and it has one of the highest price per piece ratios in the entire DC theme. Luckily, the price isn't that high, it just has a bad ratio, but you gotta admit, it's pretty funny how bad it is. But at least Giant Batman is supposed to be a display piece. The Yoda set from 2019 cost $100 for 1,771 pieces, and is frustrating in every way possible. All the pieces are basically the same color, so building it is a nightmare because you can't tell what goes where. And once you finally finish, the whole thing is hollow inside, so it falls over constantly. It's asymmetrical except for the ears and eyes, and the small head is somehow more complex to build than the rest of the entire body. It's just a terrible building experience from start to finish. And speaking of terrible building experiences, Captain America's shield costed $90 for 420 pieces, and the build is mind-numbingly repetitive. You have to build the same round frame section 17 times. Then you build the front sections 36 times. It's the same thing over and over and over. LEGO couldn't even sell this set when they offered a $40 coupon, which is almost half off. When you're practically giving sets away and people still aren't buying them, something is seriously wrong. But if you want to see LEGO's most expensive disaster, the table football set is it. This came out through the Ideas theme in 2022 for $250. Now, the original fan design that got voted in was a full 11-a-side foosball table, but LEGO downgraded it to a tiny 5-a-side version and kept the price the same. You can buy an actual real full-size foosball table for that much money, and this LEGO version, the rods break easily and the playability is terrible. It has a 2-star rating on lego.com with only 9 reviews. People bought it, tried to use it once, and immediately knew they'd been ripped off. And speaking of feeling ripped off, the ATST has a 2-star rating with 45 reviews on lego.com. Most of the complaints are about the price versus what you actually get. People feel like they're paying way too much for way too little, which is a terrible feeling to have after buying a LEGO set. You should be excited to build, not angry that you wasted your money. But the racing yacht from 2024 had the same problem. It costed $120, and according to Brick Brothers, so much is relegated to a large sponsor-heavy sale, it felt flat. The set has a single simple Technic function, which is pathetic for that price point. The sale dominates the entire build in the most boring way possible, and people felt like they got scammed. When a Technic set's main feature is just a giant stickered sail, you know the design went wrong somewhere. But sometimes, sets fail for reasons that have nothing to do with the actual build. The BTS Dynamite set was released at the absolute worst time possible. Right after it came out, all the members of BTS enlisted for the military in South Korea. This meant they couldn't promote the set at all. There was no hype, no marketing campaigns, nothing. The timing completely killed this set before it even had a chance to succeed. But now, let's talk about sets specifically from LEGO Ideas, because the Adventure Time set from 2017 is considered the worst Ideas set ever made. According to Brick Ranker, it sits way below the rest in terms of quality and originality. It's a basic build that looks like it belongs in a junior line, not on the Ideas platform. Ideas sets are supposed to be creative and unique builds that push boundaries, but this feels like something you'd find on a $20 Impulse set. It's a complete waste of the Ideas platform. But by far, the most disappointing set ever is the LEGO Star Wars Emperor's Arrival set. The box says you can recreate Luke's final battle with Vader, but what you actually get is a 4-step hallway. That's the entire set. No duel, no action, just a hallway. You walk down 4 steps and you're done. It's a complete bait and switch. But now let's switch gears and talk about the creepy sets, because there are quite a few. Aragog in the Dark Forest is the lowest rated Harry Potter set LEGO's ever made. The spider is super blocky and has these cursed eyes that stare directly into your soul. The trap has no entrance or exit, which makes no sense, and instead of molded pieces for baby spiders, LEGO just used stickered 1x1 tiles instead. People were so creeped out by this set that they said they wanted to spray it with bug spray. When your LEGO set makes people want to kill it with Raid, that's how you know you failed. But if you think this thing is creepy, Clara Cow's ice cream shop from the Fabuland theme takes it to another level. Clara Cow runs an ice cream shop, which seems innocent enough, but then you think about it. Where does she get the milk? You almost think she's using her own milk to make ice cream, which makes this set very inappropriate. Now, obviously, this isn't confirmed or anything, but it really doesn't take that much thinking to get to this conclusion. A kid could definitely do it. But while we're on weird stuff like this, the My Dad Christian figure from the Scala line turned into a meme for being the creepiest of them all. This is an adult male Scala doll that just looks wrong. There's something deeply unsettling about it, and it's been talked about in multiple articles about the creepiest LEGO sets ever made, and usually it's pretty close to the top. But the Summer Clown from 2009 has the same problem. According to people who've seen it in person, it looks so much worse in real life than in illustrated form. The box art makes it look somewhat normal, but when you actually build it and put it on your shelf, it's nightmare fuel. And speaking of nightmare fuel, the Rocket Raccoon set apparently traumatized a reviewer's daughter so badly that she had to leave the Smith's Toys LEGO aisle completely. She couldn't even be in the same area as the set. I mean, how bad does it have to be if it's literally scarring the target audience? But it's not just the sets themselves that can be bad. Sometimes it's how they're packaged. The Marvel Studios collectible minifigures in 2024 were the first series packaged in boxes instead of bags, and this caused absolute chaos in stores. Open packages were lying around everywhere because people were using scales to weigh the boxes and figure out which minifigure was inside. This is absurd and frowned upon in the trading card community, but LEGO decided to do it anyway. They made a system that actively encouraged people to open packages in stores, which ruins the experience for everyone. And speaking of disappointing packaging, the Chewbacca plush has a 2-star rating for one simple reason. The way it's packaged makes the fur matted immediately after opening the box. You order a plush expecting it to be fluffy like a normal stuffed animal, and instead it arrives looking like it went through a washing machine. It's not fluffy at all, which completely defeats the purpose of having a plush in the first place. But the most insulting product of all time might be the battery box, which has a 2-star rating, even though it's only one single piece. 3 out of 4 reviews are negative because people are paying a premium for literally one battery box. They want more controls, they hate the powered up compatibility, and they think it's way too expensive. When your product is a single piece and people are still giving it 2 stars, you've fundamentally misunderstood what customers want. But this is nothing new for LEGO. They've been making useless stuff for years, like these salt and pepper shakers. And I want to be clear, this isn't just one product. Over the years, LEGO's released multiple different versions of these. There was a food and drink set in 2002, a gear item in 2006, and then a modern version which are 1x1 stud-shaped shakers scaled up about 600 times the size of a real one. They're not compatible with any LEGO sets, so you literally can't use them for anything but salt and pepper. And since LEGO's made so many of these, I guess they have to be selling a lot of them. But I can't say the same for this next one. Gear item 4277670 is the LEGO Egg Cup set, and it's exactly what it sounds like. 2 cups shaped like minifigure heads that you put an egg in. The lid is the top of the skull, which you can take off so you can actually reach the egg. It really feels like LEGO forgot their target audience when they made this thing. But this next item takes that meaning to a whole new level. For the most part, LEGO is very careful about not depicting alcohol in anything they make. But in 2008, someone greenlit gear item 851652, which is an official LEGO corkscrew and bottle opener with a brick as the handle. The only thing you use something like this on are wine bottles and champagne bottles, unless you just won the Super Bowl. So for them to actually release this is a pretty bold move. Now, this next item is pretty spot on with LEGO's audience, but I just can't imagine why anyone would ever buy it. I'm talking about a LEGO soap dispenser. We all know what these things are, so we also probably know how soap usually comes in its own bottle. You're telling me LEGO expects me to buy soap and pour it into a different bottle just because it's LEGO? No way, bro. That is so annoying. But at least the soap dispenser is something everyone could use. In the 1990s, LEGO released bath and shower foam as part of the Aquanauts theme, one of the deep-sea diving sub-themes from the Aquazone line. The soap came in bottles shaped like Aquanaut minifigures, which is actually pretty cool. But considering how far away LEGO is from the beauty industry, this just seems like a crazy purchase. Now, everything so far have all been one-off products, but LEGO's relationship with ice cube trays is something totally different. Right now, Bricklink has at least 5 separate official LEGO ice cube trays released across different years. There's the most recent brick-shaped tray from 2020, then a yellow ice brick tray from 2007, a minifigure-shaped tray from 2010, a LEGO Friends version in 2012, then a Legends of Chima version in 2013, and then a 1x2 brick tray from 2019. This is another one that makes absolutely no sense to me, but clearly I'm missing something because they just keep making them. They even made a tray for Belleville, the girls-oriented doll theme that ran from 1994 to 2009. This one is especially crazy because unless someone told you, you'd have literally no idea that this was made by Lego. Look at the shapes. And this isn't the only time they basically skipped the branding part. In 2019, Lego offered a free picnic blanket as a gift with purchase for orders over $200. But unless you see the logo in the corner, this thing just looks like any other picnic blanket. I mean, they could have at least put some minifigure patterns on it or something. Regardless, most of these items are completely random and won't get used very often. But if someone's buying a Lego minifigure headlamp, they're gonna be using it all the time. The most famous one by far is the Batman headlamp that Brick Fanatics talked about in their article. But just like the ice cube trays, Lego's made so many different versions of these. There's one with a regular minifigure, Harry Potter, Emmett from the Lego movie. They made so many that it would genuinely be too long to list. But then there are the zipper pullers from 2012. These are small rubber pieces shaped like bricks that you attach to a zipper and use to pull it instead of the zipper itself. Now, notice how I said shaped like bricks? Well, that's because they don't have the same dimensions as actual bricks, so the only thing you can use them for is to pull zippers. I think it'd be pretty cool if you could throw a rubber brick into something you build at home, but I guess Lego just doesn't agree. Now, at some point in Lego's history, there was a collab with Samsonite, the luggage company, and in 1978, they made set 7000-2, which is a brick-shaped suitcase with interior compartments specifically designed for storing Lego bricks, but it was only sold in Canada. And this collab with Samsonite wasn't actually a collab at all. It was a legal mistake that gave Samsonite the rights to sell Lego products in North America. And you're telling me they took this golden opportunity to sell luggage to Canada? Yeah, bro, this thing might as well not even exist. Anyways, in 2009, Lego released the classic bookends. They're basically just a way to hold up books if you don't have a bookshelf. However, there was a pretty big problem with them. The bricks on these bookends are factory glued. You can't take them off no matter how hard you try. So if you wanted to decorate yours differently, you literally couldn't. This was a pretty good idea in 2009, since kids actually read books back then, but gluing the pieces completely killed it. And they might have done the same thing with the Lego City coat rack. This thing also came out in 2009, and because of how rare it is, there's basically no information about it online. Just by looking at it though, it looks like the minifigs are glued in place, and if that's the case, this thing is a disgrace. Whoa, oh my god, whoa. Now, all of this stuff is pretty modern, but back in the 1950s and 60s, before Lego really knew what they were doing, they were making some of the craziest and also coolest stuff ever. They had an entire line for smoking. I'm talking cigar boxes, lighters, matches, ashtrays, literally everything smoking. These are documented in the unofficial Lego Sets and Parts Collector's Guide and confirmed by collectors who have found them over the years. Odds are these were made for employees back in the day, since Lego's always been a toy company, but I'm calling them useless because I don't smoke, and you shouldn't either. Now, on the complete opposite end of the age range, in 1997, Lego made set 1783, the Primo Ladybird Rattle. It's a two-piece baby rattle with Lego Primo branding, made for kids aged 6 months and up. And the way most people got one was at a Jack-in-the-Box drive-thru, because apparently it came with one of the meals as a promotion. I guess this one isn't 100% useless. I just think it's crazy that Lego collabed with Jack-in-the-Box and made a toy for a literal baby. But it's nowhere near as crazy as the Duplo Tulo screwdriver. Tulo is a Duplo sub-theme from back in the 90s, and instead of regular Duplo bricks, these ones had bolt mechanisms instead of standard studs. So Lego was basically trying to teach kids about tools from really young. On its own, this is actually a really cool concept. The problem was that Lego made you buy the screwdriver separately from everything else. It was super cheap, but making people buy it on its own is super confusing. However, it's not as confusing as the Dino Attack sand mold set from 2006. Dino Attack was a theme about people driving post-apocalyptic combat vehicles to fight off mutant dinosaurs in a ruined city, which is honestly kinda sick. This was a real LEGO theme that had regular LEGO stuff in it. And then one day, LEGO just decided to make these sand molds and throw them in the theme. But then in that same year, they released the Dino Attack chalk eggs, and somehow they make even less sense than the sand molds. Those look like dinosaurs, but these are basically Easter eggs that you can draw with on the sidewalk. I mean, it just makes no sense. The funniest part about both of these though is that they're technically in the gear theme. They're just using the Dino Attack name to try and get sales, which is a pretty weird theme to do that with. But one of the weirdest decisions has to do with the Homemaker theme. This theme launched in 1971, and it was LEGO's first major attempt at domestic playsets. Furniture, houses, kitchen, stuff like that. The problem is, the early sets in the line literally came with no figures. The most important part of the house was nowhere to be found. The instructions told parents to add dolls from other brands. LEGO didn't have a figure ready for these sets, so they outsourced it to whoever happened to make dolls at the time. They eventually invented the Maxi-Fig in 1974, which was made specifically for Homemaker, but it was basically just a stepping stone to the minifigure 4 years later, so we literally never saw it again. The weird decisions don't stop here though. In 2002, LEGO decided that Duplo, one of the most recognizable names in kids' toys, needed a rebrand, so they renamed it LEGO Explore. Parents who already had Duplo at home immediately started asking whether these were the same bricks, whether they were compatible, whether they needed to replace what they already had. They were overthinking literally everything, and rightfully so. I mean, why change a name as well known as Duplo? Sales absolutely plummeted after this because parents didn't realize Explore and Duplo were the same thing, so LEGO changed it back really fast. They were getting pretty bold in the early 2000s because this is also when they tried to compete with Hasbro and Mattel. At the time, these were two of the biggest toy companies ever, and LEGO tried to jump in by releasing 29 brick-built board games under the LEGO Games theme. The idea was that the games could be customized by rebuilding them, which is actually a pretty interesting idea. So interesting, in fact, that I got the Minotaur game when I was a kid, but apparently I was one of very few people who bought one, because most of them didn't sell. You could find them at 50 to 60% off pretty much everywhere, and the Batman and Helm's Deep games were canceled mid-development and never released because of how bad everything else did. Board games at least make some sense though. Robo Riders, on the other hand, absolutely did not. Robo Riders was a theme from the year 2000 that had robotic motorcycle minifigures. It basically bridged the gap between Slizers and Bionicle. Each Robo Rider came with a talisman wheel, which LEGO said had a unique power, and there were 16 of these wheels in total. But the problem was, LEGO never said what any of these powers actually did. Not in the sets, not on the website, not anywhere. As a result, the theme only ran for 1 year because literally nothing made any sense. But while Robo Riders left the story unfinished, Slizers managed to have 2 different stories at the same time. Slizers launched in 1999 in Europe, where all 8 robots lived on the same planet that had a bunch of different biomes. But in America, the exact same sets were released as Throwbots, and in that version, each robot lived on a completely separate planet with its own unique biome. So depending on where you lived, not only did these toys have different names, but the lore around them was different too, which again makes absolutely no sense. But the craziest item on this list is probably Modulex, which Godfred Christensen designed in 1963 as a completely separate brick system made for architects. The bricks were made for scale modeling at 1 to 20, and the early ones had LEGO printed on the studs. But later on, they got rid of the name and changed it to M because they thought the LEGO name was too childish for a professional product. The problem was, architects didn't buy it. Kjeld Kirk Christensen, Godfred's son, told us what his dad was thinking. He thought this was ingenious, and this would really be changing the world. Then added, actually, it didn't really succeed that much. Eventually, it found its audience, and has been doing pretty well since then. But for a while, Modulex really couldn't have been more useless. But then there's LEGO Forma, which is probably the funniest LEGO story in recent years. In 2018, LEGO used a crowdfunding platform to launch a Technic koi fish set. They thought it'd be a waste of money, so they wanted fans to pay for it instead. As scummy as it is, it worked unbelievably well, and LEGO raised $1.4 million, which was 1,334% of the goal. Clearly, people wanted this Technic koi fish, and since LEGO had over 10 times the money they needed, they decided to go for it. Forma released, and AFOLs were generally pretty happy with it. But then, for some reason, LEGO just ended it. The theme only got 4 sets, and it didn't even last a year. This was something that fans clearly wanted, but this time, LEGO decided it was useless, not the fans. But how much of this stuff did you already know? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.